Hey, hello people, welcome to Gurukula. I'm Jai. So, in this video, we are trying to achieve an AI assisted penetration testing. So, we are basically trying to integrate an LLM model which is basically present on a Windows machine to have access to Kali Linux, which has lots and lots of tools which hackers and penetration testers used for penetration testing, and how do these two machines get connected. While there are several ways that we can achieve this, and while we can connect these two machines, the most common approach and the most easiest approach is by using model context protocol, which is in short called as MCP. MCP is essentially a bridge that basically connects an AI model like ChatGPT or Claude to real tools, and especially in a controlled and structured way. So you can consider that MCP is like a plug-in system that lets AI to talk to the tools in a very safe way. So to have a look at a setup that we are going to construct over here. So this is how we are going to set up our lab today. So we are going to have a Windows virtual machine where we will have LLM like Claude desktop. And on the other hand, we will have a Kali Linux virtual machine, which basically has all the tools for penetration testing. So we are going to achieve this by using or configuring the MCP servers. So we have set up our MCP server at the Kali Linux machine, and we have MCP client which is set up at Windows machine. So when we try to execute a command like, or we can just chat to our LLM model saying like scan for the open ports at some targets. So here in our example, I've just stated like 10, 10, 10, and 5. Windows machine will basically understand that to execute this particular task, it needs a tool called Nmap. So basically what this Windows machine does is this Claude desktop will get connected to MCP client, and the MCP client recognizes that Nmap has to be called over here, and it creates a JSON file and it calls for the Nmap tool, and this JSON file will get, or it just sent to MCP server, and this MCP server will in turn execute the command inside the Kali Linux machine. So the MCP server will basically access the terminal of Kali Linux machine, and it executes the command nmap followed by the target, and which is passed as an argument in the JSON file which is sent by the MCP client. And once this particular command is executed at the Kali Linux machine, the output of this particular command will be sent back to the MCP server, while the MCP server passes through the output, and MCP server will in turn construct another JSON file which has a clearer output and recognizable output. So for example, you can see that it has identified port number 22 is open and the service running on that is SSH. Port number 80 is also running and port number 80 is also open, and the service running on that port is HTTP. So this JSON file is getting exchanged with MCP client, while MCP client again reads this information and it is presented to the user in the LLM in a very presentable and human understandable way. So this will be the text, or an example of the text what an user would see on an LLM. So there are two open ports, port 22 running SSH and port 80 running HTTP, and this will be the output what the end user actually sees. So this is what the setup what we are trying to achieve in this demonstration, and without wasting much of your time, let's jump into setting up the lab. So before we jump into setting up this environment, this is highly offensive, and this video is solely intended for educational and informational purposes only, and all the demonstrations involved in integrating of Claude LLM with Kali Linux are performed in a controlled and in a lawful environment. And since this virtual environment is owned by me, I assign myself a permissions to run this particular penetration testing. So I expect all the viewers to strictly not to replicate any procedures shown in video on any system which you do not have explicit permissions to attack or to conduct a penetration testing. And Gurukula or me does not promote, encourage any form of unethical behavior or illegal activities, unauthorized access, or misuse of security tools. So always practice responsibly, ethically, and legally compliant to the cybersecurity. So with this, we will jump on to the setup. For this setup to work, we need two virtual machines. Here I have taken two virtual machines. You can see one is my Windows virtual machine and then another one is my Kali Linux virtual machine. So here Windows we will be setting up our LLM and other things, and in Kali Linux we have all the tools which comes pre-installed. So we are not going to install much on Kali Linux, but we just have to make a connection between these two virtual machines. So first we will start configuring our Windows machine. So let me maximize to my Windows machine over here. So before we get started, there are few softwares which has to be installed on your Windows machine. So if you are very familiar with installing the softwares, you can skip to the next part of the video. But if you are not familiar and if you just want to follow along, you just feel free to follow along. So in your Windows machine, just open up a browser, and then the first one that you just wanted to install is Python, because our scripts will be in Python. So we need Python programming language to be installed in our Windows machine. So open up a browser and then you can just search for Python download, and you should see the first link, download Python from python.org. So when you visit that particular link, you will see an option to download Windows Python programming language. So you can just click on this particular button so that it gives you a Python exe file which we can execute later. So let me first download all the exe files that are required, and then we will install it one after the other later on. And the second software that we will be requiring is the Claude desktop. Similarly, just search for Claude desktop, and then you will see that there will be a link for download Claude. Once you visit that particular link, you will see a button to download the exe file. So there you can see that you can download the Windows version of Claude desktop, and you can just click on this button and that will give you an exe file for the Claude. So the next software that we'll be requiring is Git for Windows, because we just wanted to clone some GitHub repositories into Windows. So we need Git commands. So just search for Git for Windows download, and then you will get the first link. So Git install for Windows. So once you click on that particular link, you can just land onto this page, and then here you can see that there is a link which will help you to download the Git for Windows.exe. So you will get the exe file. So when you click on this button, you will get the exe file. And the next software that we will be requiring is Visual Code Studio. Basically, we will have to edit few configuration files. So this is my personal choice. You can use any programming or you can use any code editing softwares. This is my personal choice to use Visual Studio Code. So just search for Visual Studio Code download or VS Code download, and you will be landing on to this particular page. And then you can see that there will be a button which will help you to download the Visual Studio Code for Windows. So these are all the four primary softwares that you need to install before we start our process. So I have already downloaded all these exe files, and that is available on my downloads. So we just have to install these softwares one after the other. You can follow along, or if you are familiar with installing all these softwares, you can just go ahead and install all these softwares. So first I will try to install Python. Let me just double click on Python. So here you can clearly see that the wizard has just started, and before you click on install now, you just have to check these two boxes. So use admin privileges and then add python.exe to path. And once you have checked these two buttons, then you just feel free to click on install now. It will ask you for administrative privileges. Just click on yes, and the Python setup process will get started. So our Python got installed, and you can see that the dialog box says that the setup was successful, and then you can close this dialog box. And we can start installing our next software. Let me install VS Code. Just double click on this exe file. So in the installation wizard, just click on I accept the agreement, and then you can click on next. And I'm happy with the default location. Just click on next, and you don't have to change anything over here. I'm happy with all the default. Let's click on next, and then I'll click on next, next, and install. So this setup will actually install Visual Studio Code for Windows. Now our Visual Studio Code got installed, and you can see that the setup box says that completing Visual Studio Code, and it asks if we have to launch it now. I don't want to launch Visual Studio Code now. Let me just uncheck it, and then I'll click on finish. And let's move on to installing our third software, which is JIT for Windows. Just double click on the exe file. So here you can just read and go through, and then you can click on next. I'm happy with the default settings. I'll go for the next, and then next. I'm happy with what it shows, and here I can see that let JIT decide where to put on my folders, and then I'm happy with the default settings. You can click on next, you can click on next. So you don't have to change anything pretty much, at least for this setup. All the default configurations will work. Can click on next, and you can click on next. So here when it asks for credential mapper, here I don't want to use any credentials mapper. I'll just click on none, and then I'll click on next, and here I'll click on install. Now the JIT got installed on our Windows machine. You can see that the wizard says completing the JIT setup wizard. So now I don't want to launch the JIT. I don't want to read the release notes as well. Let me uncheck it, and then I'll click on finish. And now we can start install our fourth software, which is Claude setup. Just double click on the exe file. The Claude has started installing. Yes, you can see that the Claude has got installed on our Windows machine, and as you can see, all of these installations are pretty straightforward. So I'm just waiting for this page to get loaded. Yes, so now the Claude got installed. Let me go on full screen, and you can click on get started here, and it will ask you to sign in to Google account to use Claude desktop, which we will do it a little later. So we are good so far, and till now we have successfully installed all the four softwares which is required to make our setup ready. So anyways, we will just check whether this Python and JIT got installed in our machine. So let me open up a command prompt, and then just type for Python, and then hyphen version. If it displays okay, probably I should have to restart the machine so that it gets reflected over here. So let me restart the machine once, and then let me check whether the installation is proper. So let me close this Claude now, and I'll quickly restart this VM now. So we have successfully restarted our Windows virtual machine, and let me check whether our Python and JIT softwares are installed correctly. So in order to verify, we just have to open up the command prompt. So click on command prompt. So in the command prompt, type Python version. So if it displays the version that we have installed, and it confirms that we have actually installed the Python, and you can see that it rightly shows that Python 3.14 has got installed. And similarly, we just have to verify whether the pip packages are also installed with this. So let us verify that. So we can type pip version. So that should also display the version of the pip which got installed in this machine. and you can clearly see that it shows that the pip 25.2 got installed. So we have both the setup ready, the Python is installed, and then while installing the Python, the pip packages was also installed along with the installation. And let's check for git. So git hyphen version, and you can see that the git is also installed properly so that it shows the version number. So we have successfully verified that all these three packages have been installed. Python is installed, pip package is also installed, and git is also installed. And from this Windows setup, you can also see that our Claude desktop is also installed. You can see an application here, and you can just scroll down, and then you can see that the Visual Studio Code application is also got installed. So now all our softwares got installed. Now it's time to start setting up our virtual lab so that we can integrate LLM to the Kali Linux. So first we will start setting up from the Windows machine, and once we do everything on Windows machine, then we can move on to the Kali Linux machine. The first thing is to install the Claude desktop. So I think we have already done that. So, and the next thing is to clone the GitHub repository from Google, from Git. So let's open up our browser. So from your Google search, you can search for MCP Kali Server GitHub, so that you will get the direct link of that MCP Kali server. And this is the repository that we are going to use in our setup. So just open this link on a new tab, and this is the repository which we are going to clone inside our Windows machine, and the same repository has to be cloned on our Kali Linux machine as well. So this is the repository that we are going to use, and when you just read the description, you can see that this repository is a lightweight API bridge that actually connects the MCP client like Claude desktop or Fire to the API server, which allows executing commands on the Linux terminal. So there are pretty much interesting informations that you can find in the description below. So I'll leave it for self-exploration. Now we will start cloning this particular repository. So all you see is code button over here. Just click on that, and then you will get the link for cloning this particular repository. Just click this icon to copy the entire link. You can get back to your terminal, and then you can clone this particular website by entering the command git clone followed by the URL just you have copied. So I just paste it over here, and then okay, before cloning this, it's a good practice to create a new directory. So what we can do here is we can just open a new directory somewhere. I'll come to documents, and then let me open up a new folder here. So, and then I will name this folder as MCP, and then when I hit enter, now I would like to clone the GitHub repository inside this directory, so it's better to open this place inside terminal. So I'll just go over here, and then I will simply type cmd, and you can see that this location has just got opened in a new terminal, and now we are inside documents and inside MCP, and this is the place where we just wanted to clone our GitHub repository. So I will just execute the command here. So git clone, and followed by the URL that you have just copied from the GitHub. Just hit enter, and you can see that the directory is getting cloned onto your Windows machine. You can see that the directory has been cloned successfully. So once you have cloned this particular directory inside your Windows virtual machine, now it's time to edit this particular files. And what we can do here is we will just enter and see what are all the files that got copied, and this will be pretty much the same files what you see in the GitHub repositories over here. So all these files should have been copied inside your directory now. So now we will just open this particular directory, which means inside this MCP Kali server, let's just open this in our studio code. So I'll just get into my MCP directory over here inside the command prompt, and then I will change the directory to MCP Kali Linux server, and inside this particular server you just simply type code space dot, so that this particular directory will be opened on Visual Studio Code. And now you can see that in the on the left hand side you are directly landed onto this MCP Kali server directory, and then you can just thrust this or this. I trust myself, so I can click on thrust. You can just safely close this welcome screen, and now you can have a look at this particular Python codes whatever have been given over here. So you can reject all the auto installation prompts, and this is a simple Python file which basically connects to your Kali server. This has to be installed on the Kali machine, and this has to be configured on our Windows machine. So MCP server has to be installed on the Windows machine, and Kali server has to be configured on your Kali machine. So once you are done over here, since we are dealing with Python, there might be different versions of Python you might be using for different projects that you work on. So it's always a better and a good practice to create a virtual environment over here. So first we will create a virtual environment. So I'll go to terminal here, and then I'll click on new terminal. So here you can see that we have got a new terminal over here at the bottom of the screen. So once the terminal is ready, so we can just create a new virtual environment for us. So you can just type Python -m and then VENV virtual environment, and you can give any name for your virtual environment, and for the sake of understanding, let me just give MCP itself. As we are dealing with MCP, let me just click on MCP. So once you execute this particular command, you can actually see that the virtual environment have been created, and then now the next step is you just have to activate this virtual environment, so that anything that you install or any packages that you configure will actually get installed and configured only within this virtual environment. So once that got executed, and then we can just activate this virtual environment, and the command should be dot slash mcp. That is the name that you have created, and every virtual environment directory will have a directory called scripts, and then inside that you just have activate script. So just click on active, means just type activate, and then when you just hit enter. So if you get this particular command, it says that by default you are not allowed to execute any scripts. This is because of the admin privileges, that if you do not have admin privileges, then you may get this particular error. But we can easily bypass this particular thing temporarily, and the command is set -execution policy and -scope process execution policy to bypass. So this is the command we just wanted to execute, so that temporarily your execution policy will be bypassed over here. And once you have successfully executed this command, you will be allowed to execute scripts inside your terminal. So let me just copy this, and then I will paste it over here, and then I will run this command again. So once you run this particular command, you could have seen that there is an MCP within parenthesis on the left hand side of your prompt, which says that your virtual environment is actually activated and the virtual environment creation process is successful. So our next step is to install the required packages, and we already have the requirements.txt. So requirement.txt says that we need to install Flask, we need to install request, and we need to install MCP. So basically, if I have to look at the code, it's up to your choice. You can simply run all this requirements.txt. So simply type Python pip install requirements.txt, but considering the space on my virtual machine, I just wanted to install only the packages which is required for this MCP server. So basically this MCP server is the file which is going to run on my Windows. So I can see that they are just using only requests package and then the MCP package. So I think it is enough to install only the requests and MCP in the Windows machine, whereas Flask I will install in the Kali machine. So here I'll just execute pip. So basically we are installing the Python packages inside the virtual environment, and please ensure that you are executing everything inside the virtual environment. Ensure that this MCP is available before your prompt. So if this is not there, which means that you are installing these packages in a global environment, and that may cause some issues with any other projects which you are running on your machine. So pip install. So I have to install requests and I have to request MCP. So these are all the two packages which I just wanted to install. Let me hit enter, and the pip will now download the package and then it will install it inside my machine. So we can see that our pip has installed both the packages. So now we can temporarily switch on to our Kali Linux machine, and we will do the rest of the setup in the Kali Linux machine. So let me sign up to my Kali Linux. And inside, once you are inside your Kali Linux machine, you can open up the terminal. There you can see the black color icon. You can just click on that, and that gives you your Kali Linux terminal. Let me zoom in a little bit for better visibility. And you just have to clone the same repository on your Kali Linux machine as well. So let me just go to the browser, and you can copy it from your Windows machine as well. But we'll open it up in Kali Linux machine also. So here is the MCP Kali server. You can just click on this code icon and copy this URL. You can come back to your terminal and you can just execute the same thing. So git is already installed on your Kali Linux, so you don't have to install it again. So git clone and followed by the link that you have copied. So you can just hit enter. I have already copied this while testing on my virtual environment. So once you hit enter, this GitHub repository will start to get cloned onto your Kali Linux machine. Since I have already done that, I'm not executing it again, but instead let me just show you the directory like it just got installed. So let me just run ls-l so that you can see that the Kali MCP Kali server is already cloned on to my machine. So what we can do here is we can just we just have to create the same virtual environment here as well. Before that, let me just jump on to my MCP Kali server, and then once I hit enter, I am inside MCP Kali server directory, and we will also see what are all the files that is present inside this directory. That is pretty much the same thing what we have seen inside that. So here also you can see this MCP folder will not be seen on your Kali Linux machine because this is actually the virtual environment which I have just created, and I will just now walk you through how to create a virtual environment. It's pretty much the same like what we did in the Windows machine. So you just have to create a virtual environment here as well. So you can simply type Python. So you just have to type Python 3 here whenever you are running on a virtual Linux machine, because Python won't work here. It's Python 3. So -m virtual env and then followed by the name MCP. So this is the command which we just wanted to execute. As you can see, when I type MCP, it gets bold because MCP is the virtual environment which I have already created. So you can see it's available as a directory in my Kali Linux machine as well. But for you, if you are executing for the first time, just type python 3 -m virtual env followed by any name that you can give. Since I am using MCP there on Windows, I'll use the same thing over here as well. So once that is created, and the next thing is we just have to activate that. So in order to activate, we just have to execute the command. So to activate your virtual environment, you just have to type source mcp/bin/activate, and you just hit enter. You can see that again we are inside our virtual environment called MCP. So now let me just clear my screen. So now you can clearly see that we are inside our virtual environment called MCP, and which is present inside the directory MCP Kali server. So now you can just install the packages which you just wanted to install here. So here we need to install Flask here. So pip install Flask, and you just hit enter. So as I've already installed the Flask on my Kali Linux, it shows that requirement already satisfied. But if you do not have Flask, it will just download the package and then it will get installed. So once everything is ready on your Kali Linux virtual machine, so now it's time to start your Kali server. So you can simply type python 3. So python 3 Kali server.py is the Python file which you just wanted to execute, and then you just have to expose this server on all the interfaces. So you just have to pass the arguments --IP and followed by 0.0.0.0. So this argument will basically start the Kali server on all the interfaces, not only on the local host, so that it becomes accessible for the Windows machine too. So let me just hit enter, and you can see that my Python script is actually running successfully, and it says that starting Kali Linux tool API server on 0.0.0.:5000. It is exposed on port number 5000, and you can see the warning as well. So this is an development server, do not use it in production development, so use a production WSGI server instead. So all we need is this particular IP address. So you can see that my Kali Linux IP address is 10.026:5000. So this particular server is running on this IP address. So this is all pretty much you just wanted to do on your Kali Linux virtual machine. So now we can switch back to our Windows machine. So you can switch back to your Windows machine now. So once you switch back to your Windows machine, you can actually try connecting to try connecting to the Kali server which is running over there. So the command which you just wanted to execute is python dot mcp colon dot, okay, it's dot slash, so mcp underscore server dot py, and you should specify to which server this should get connected. So ---- server followed by the link what your Kali server gave. So let me go back to our Kali Linux machine, and this is the link that was given. Let me just copy this selection. I'll come back to my Windows virtual machine and then I will paste it over here. So this is the command. You just have to enter it over here and you just hit enter. So your MCP server has also started successfully, and then it says that it successfully connected to Kali API server on 10.0.26 on port number 5000, and it has also verified that the status is healthy, and you can see that there is an command saying that starting Kali MCP server. So you have successfully connected to your Kali Linux machine. So now technically these two machines are connected over here. So now these two machines are technically connected. So now what we can do is we can just verify it with our Claude desktop, and before that there are some configuration files which we have to modify. So let me just modify that, because now Windows is connected to Kali Linux and Kali is connected to this Windows machine, but Claude does not know that where exactly this MCP server is running, where exactly this Kali server is running. So we have to inform Claude desktop in the form of configuration file. So let me get back to my Windows machine, and then let's fire up our Claude desktop. So go for in search of Claude. Let me open this Claude, and I'll try to sign up using Google. You can use any valid Google account. So now we have successfully authenticated into our Claude desktop using our Gmail account, and once you have just logged in, this is what the first prompt that you will get. So you can just click on continue, and you can see this is the prompt where we have to prompt, but before we give any prompt, we just have to make the configuration file ready. So just click on the left bottom, you can see that your icon, I mean your profile icon will appear. So just click on that and then go to settings, and inside settings you just have to click on the developer settings. So that's where you will have option to configure the MCP servers. You can just click on edit config, and what you can do is this is what the file which you just wanted to edit. Basically this I mean initially this will be a blank file, so you just have to edit this file. So just double click this claude desktop.config, so that by default it opens up in your Visual Studio Code, and you can see that there is nothing over here. You can just erase this. And how do you configure is like you will get a basic setup in the GitHub repository itself. When you just scroll down in the official GitHub repository, so there is a sample configuration Claude for desktop file. So this is what the thing that you just wanted to copy, and you just have to modify the command that you're going to pass, and then you're going to edit the arguments that you are going to pass. So this is basically the path where exactly your MCP server is located, and this is the path where exactly which command you just want the Claude to execute. So you can simply just copy this and then you can paste it over here, but I have my configuration file. Uh, so yeah, so here is my configuration file. So here I just have to make few modifications. What I have to do here is, so the command is like you just have to execute python.exe, and this python.exe is actually located inside the virtual environment that you have created. Earlier we just created a virtual environment, right? So you just have to copy the actual link of that python.exe which is present inside the virtual environment. So we can just go to our Kali MCP server folder, and you will see that the directory called MCP. So this is our virtual environment which we created. Just click on that MCP. You can go to scripts, and then you can search for python.exe. So you can actually see that there is an application file called Python. So this is the command you just wanted to execute every time when an API call is actually made. So it is present over here. You can just copy this particular link. I'll just copy this and then I'll come over here. So we know that the execution file is python.exe. I will leave that and I will just edit the rest of the documents. So basically when you just copy the file path, it copies in and backward slash, but in the studio code you just have to change that to /. So just change the direction of the slashes. So we have successfly edited the command argument, and we just have to paste the exact location where our MCP server.py is located. So you can actually see that this is the mcp.py, and we need the location of this particular file. And for this, inside this visual code, you just right click on it, and then you can just copy relative path. You can just click on copy path, and then you can come back to Claude desktop configuration, and then you can paste it over here by Control V. So you can just change this to change the direction of slashes here as well. And next thing that you just wanted to edit is the IP address of your Kali Linux machine. So the IP address of Kali Linux machine is 10.0.26. You just have to type that over here. So we will just type 10.0.26 and 5000. Let me just save this configuration file. So just hit Control S, and then you can force close this. So in order to take this configuration file into effect, you just have to force close the Claude and reopen it again. Let me close the Claude application, and you just have to foreclose it because it runs somewhere in the background. You can see that the Claude is still running over here. So what we can do here is we can force close it. I'll just click on Control Shift and Escape. So the task manager will open, and in the task manager search for the Claude and force close it. So here you can see that the Claude is running. You can just click on that, and you can click on end task. There are lots of background processes running. So kill all of the Claude related tasks. So now we just have closed all the Claude related things, and please ensure that there is no Claude related services running at the backend so that it actually kills all the background processes. So, and then we can reopen the Claude again. So just let me just go to start, and I'll click on Claude. Let me maximize this. So we will just ensure whether our configuration file have been configured correctly or if there is any error in configuring the setup. So we will go to our profile icon and click on settings. So you can click on developer settings, and here in this developer setting you can actually see that your local MCP servers, Claude has successfully identified that there is an Kali MCP which is running, and you can see that the status like Kali MCP is running. So if you see this particular prompt in your developer tag, then your setup is complete and then your setup is successful. So you might see some errors saying there is some white space error in the JSON file, which you can safely ignore because that error is because of a mismatch of JSON file in the communication between Kali Linux and then the Windows machine. But otherwise, now your Windows machine has successfully connected to the Kali Linux machine. So it says it could not attach to Kali server MCP, but anyways we will just check whether if it is connected to Kali Linux server or not. Are you connected to MCP server? What tools you have access to? So if it is successfully communicating to the MCP server, it should search for all the tools, and now you can actually see that it says that yes, I am connected to MCP model context protocol server, and it basically says that it has access to Nmap. So enum for Linux, which is basically an privilege escalation tool, sorry, an enumeration tool for Linux versions. It has access to Gobuster, dir, burb, nicto, SQL. You can see pretty much it has access to mostly used tools in the penetration testing. So once you are at this place, now we have successfully connected or integrated AI to the penetration testing environment. So now let's put this environment into test by solving a PortSwigger lab. So for that, let me create a PortSwigger lab on my host machine, where I have actually we will just go to our PortSwigger lab. All we need is just an valid link. So here is the PortSwigger Academy. So let me just go to SQL injection. We will test a simple SQL injection, and I will come to all SQL injection labs. And I just wanted to work on this particular lab. So this particular lab, we are tasked to get the administrator password by performing SQL injection attack. So what I will just try to do here is I will just take the description of this particular lab in order to prompt the Claude desktop. I'll just copy this, and then I'll just open up a notepad. Okay, we will do the rest of the things in our virtual machine itself. So we will simply open up a notepad. You can directly type this in your prompt, but just for you to give a idea of what we are going to type. So here is our prompt. So you are a senior pen testing penetration tester. So you can simply type you are tasked to conduct a pen tests in this target URL. The target URL is, okay, we didn't copy the target URL. Let me just access the lab, and this PortSwigger Academy will spin up a virtual lab for us. So we will take that lab's URL as the target, and we will give that to our Claude LLM. And so here is an basically an vulnerable website which has SQL injection vulnerability in this. And in order to understand this particular lab, when you just come back, you can actually see that there is a database in this particular lab where you have to conduct an union attack, and you have to find out the administrator password, right? So we will just jump back to our virtual environment, and let me just post this URL. So this is the URL. Your task description is, and for the task description, we can simply copy what's there in the description and we will paste it as such. So now we are actually trying to solve the lab by logging in as administrator user. So the Claude will try to log in as admin by sending get requests over there. Let me just post it over here. And finally, so we are pretty much sure that it is going to use the SQLMap, and if you are familiar SQL, while running SQLMaps, it will ask you by the prompts. So I just want my AI to do this entirely on its own. So let me just include something else. So you can auto answer all the prompts given by the SQLMap, and I'm indirectly instructing it to use SQLMap. So this is pretty much what my prompt is. Let me just control all, select all, and then I'll copy this. I'll go to the prompt and then I will hit enter. So here is our prompt, which we are asking our AI to attack a web application which has an SQL injection vulnerability, and we are completely automating this. And I'm not at all going to touch my Kali Linux machine. All I've just done is I've just connected my Kali Linux machine to this Windows machine, and this Windows machine is going to do penetration testing. And on successful completion of this pen test, we should have password of the administrator user, so that we can log in as administrator in the PortSwigger lab. So let's see how it does the job. Let me pass the prompt. And these errors you can safely ignore, but somehow your MCP is actually running at the background. So you can see that it has actually started the port scan. It has a clear idea, like it is just saying that let me start by scanning the target to understand what we are working with. So it basically running an Nmap scan and then use SQLMap to exploit the SQL injection vulnerability. So when you just drop down this, you can see it is just sending a JSON file. So here is the target argument, which is basically an URL for our lab, and scan type is SV. It is trying to enumerate the versions of everything, and it's just trying to run these two. It's just scanning only two ports, that is 80 and then 443. So if you take a look at the Kali Linux virtual machine, you could see that there are requests coming from thing. So here you can actually see that our Kali Linux is receiving the instructions, requests. So nmap-sv on port number 80 and 443. So this is what actually been sent like a JSON file. So you can see that the target has been given and service enumeration is given and port numbers are given, and that has been converted to a command inside Kali Linux machine, and then the command is getting executed over here. So let's wait, it will take some time. Let's wait for a while and then we will see what it actually does. So now it is executing an SQL map, and it says that I will run it in batch mode to auto answer the prompts, and you can see that the arguments are sent by URL, and it is running it in a batch mode, and then it is enumerating the databases that is present in the web application. So we could able to see the SQL command which was executed in our Kali terminal as well. So it has executed the right command. So it is that easy to conduct penetration testing with the help of AI. So you can automate it to certain extent, but at the same time, for the defensive people having look at this particular video, so it is that easy to run an attack on a vulnerable website. So this doesn't require any knowledge. So earlier we were calling them as script kiddies, but script kiddies should at least know to run a tool. Like they have to know the exact command to run the SQLMap. They need to know, or they need to write an Hydra command to conduct a brute force. But now with the involvement of AI, these script kiddies need not have to know how to write a simple command on Hydra or SQLMap or Nikto. So AI does the job. So this is further increasing the attack vector um, for the vulnerable services. So you can actually see that the SQL map was confirmed and SQL injection vulnerability has been confirmed, and it has rightly identified the type of database it is being used by the target web application, and it is executing an union attack. And by executing the union attack, it has rightly identified the table as well. So you can see that there is a table called users underscore rdjzp, and it has identified the columns as well. So it is executing SQLMap at a rapid speed, and it just identified the table, and from that table it has extracted the columns as well. So username, password, and then email, and I'm damn sure that it's going to take the administrator and then the password from there. So all that I have to check is whether it is auto submitting it again, or it is just stopping at retrieving the administrator password. Let's see. So coming back to our host machine and checking the status of the lab, it still says that the lab is not solved. But if it gets requests from the Claude, this lab gets auto submitted. So it has successfully extracted all the user credentials. So all the user credentials have been extracted, and you can see that it's throwing the username and password of the vulnerable web application, and all of this are completely happening on an hands-free mode. So we just gave only the prompt, and everything is being done in an autonomous way. So it has successfully identified the administrator password too. So you can actually see that it has identified the administrator password, and so I think the Claude has stopped executing over here, but it has rightly identified the administrator and then the password. So now what we will try to do here is we will try to ask Claude to submit the requests. Can you submit the credentials to solve the lab? Already it has done its job, but let's just push the limits of AI if we can able to submit it, because we are executing this from a virtual environment. So basically there should be some CSRF protections should be there, and we will see how this Claude manages. So basically it failed to fetch the login page. So it is just using the curl command, and you can see that it is asking for a permission. I'll just click on allow. So let's see what actually happens over here. So yes, as I rightly said, cross-site request CSRF token is basically present. So it has identified that in order to solve this lab, it needs the CSRF token, and then it's trying to fetch the CSRF token. So it's verifying whether the lab has got solved or not. So you can see that the login was successful, and then the lab got solved successfully. Let me verify it from here, and you can see that the lab has got solved. So everything is automated, just AI took care of everything. So it just managed to take the CSRF token from the response, and then it used the right CSRF token and the right credentials. It auto submitted the request to the target, and it has just made the challenge completed. So it just identified it. So it is that easy to conduct a penetration test now. So, and we have successfully solved the lab entirely by using AI, so without any human intervention. So yeah, so that's the video. So considering the length of the video, I will just wind up the video here, and then I'm going to see you in the next video. Until then, it's bye from Jay, and happy learning.